Welcome back to Business of Drinks. I'm Erica Ducey.
And I'm Scott Rosenbaum. Today, we're digging into one of the most complex parts of the beverage ecosystem, hospitality at scale.
Our guest is Miranda Breedlove, Beverage Director for the Lifestyle Group at Hyatt. She oversees beverage strategy across more than 70 different lifestyle properties with nearly 40 managed F&B programs and over 75 venues across the U.S. and internationally. These include concepts you're familiar with, I'm sure, like Thompson Hotels, The Standard, Andaz, and Dream Hotels.
What's fascinating is that Hyatt's lifestyle division doesn't just replicate bar concepts across properties. Each property has its own identity and sense of place. So Miranda's job isn't just about setting standards, it's about balancing national supplier partnerships that resonate locally. She balances all of this while protecting margins and performance.
She started behind the bar at 21 years old, then opened venues across Chicago and worked her way into beverage leadership. And she joined Hyatt right as the company was building out this lifestyle division. She's one of the few people at this level who's deeply rooted in the craft side of the bar world and now operates inside a global corporate structure.
In this conversation, we really get into the mechanics of how brands land inside a group like this and how they scale.
We talk about what national account strategy actually looks like when distribution and pricing vary market by market. We dig into why she often pilots a brand in 3 to 5 properties first before expanding. And Miranda is very clear about what emerging suppliers need to have in place to work with these properties, from true national distribution coverage to strong local reps who will actually show up and support the account.
We also get into activations, what makes them meaningful versus forgettable, and the systems that Miranda uses to drive performance. These are things like menu matrix analysis, as well as simply knowing how to read a P&L, a skill which she says is wildly underutilized in this industry.
And when it comes to trends, she draws a sharp line between short-term fads and long-term movements. Zero proof, in her view, is not going away. It may not yet be a top revenue driver, but it's critical to brand value and the guest experience. We also talk about tequila's continued dominance, the resurgence of martini culture, and nostalgia-driven cocktails.
So, if you are a founder, a distributor, or an operator trying to understand how hospitality groups make decisions, this episode lays it out clearly.
Here's our conversation with Miranda Breedlove of the Lifestyle Group at Hyatt. And now, a word from our sponsor. Meet Ride, a range of 2-ounce shots designed to help you manage your everyday moments. It's made with science-backed ingredients and free from sugar and calories. Whether you need to energize, get focused, or unwind, you'll find it on Amazon and at select retailers. To learn more and partner with Ride, visit ryde.com. And now, back to the show. Miranda, welcome to the Business of Drinks.
Hi, how are you today?
So excited to have you here. I've been wanting to have on someone who really understands the hospitality side of the business from a kind of higher level strategic role. So I think you are the perfect person to come on and have this conversation. Let's start with your background. So you went from working behind the bar to overseeing beverage strategy, across Hyatt's entire lifestyle group. So walk me through the trajectory and what led you into this role.
Yeah, so I was lucky that I started bartending at 21, basically as soon as I could in Chicago. But that was kind of an interesting entry, because I definitely didn't mean to. I moved to Chicago from Minnesota to go to school at Loyola. Ended up transferring to Columbia for a semester, Harrington for a semester, and then back to Loyola. And I ended up getting pregnant unexpectedly, which at the same time I ran out of money. So I moved back home to go through the adoption process with my mom close and my childhood best friend. And when I was there, I realized I had no way of really getting back to Chicago. So I went to bartending school 7 months pregnant in Minnesota, which gave me the confidence to walk down the street on Lincoln Avenue and apply for jobs, which is where I started working. From there, I did the industry thing. I bounced around quite a bit looking for the right fit, the right money. And ultimately, I started to do it because I was learning so much at every new position. And I became pretty fond of opening bars. And A lot of people who do that know that once you're in it for a minute, it starts to be really frustrating or lose its glitz, I guess. And so I was doing a lot of openings. I moved into working with a company called Four Corners Taverns that I was with for quite a while and became a manager there, which is where I realized how much I didn't know. Just the beginning of realizing that, very humbling. But I did start to work for some people that were incredible mentors and who were able to really start to guide my kind of path. And I took a management role at a like one of their higher end venues where I became the cocktail list and beer manager essentially. And then when we ended up closing that, they asked me to go manage a sports bar, and I was like, nah, I want to go do this cocktail thing some more. I had just heard about things like Speed Rack, and I was so interested in the community. And so I started bartending at a bar called Broken Shaker in Chicago that had a great pedigree in Miami prior to that. A lot of learning there, a lot of learning what to do, a lot of learning what not to do. And I started doing a lot of traveling too. So I was doing national events and consulting work. I was traveling for myself. I did the cocktail apprentice program at Tails, which is turned out to be a pretty important piece of the story. And eventually, after working at a couple more spots, I felt like I was ready to manage again. So, I worked at Bad Hunter in Chicago, which was great, but I started working as the beverage director for a small group called Out to Lunch Hospitality. And we had a plan to open one. We picked up a 150-year-old dive bar that I was enamored with, still one of my favorite projects to this day. And then we had plans for some more. And I was in the middle of doing all of that. I was doing bartender boxing circuit from Cazadores. I got my hands into a lot of things. And the alumni group for that CAP program that I had done prior, somebody posted in there mentioning this job opportunity. And A, I didn't know a job like this had ever existed. B, I had no reason to be qualified for this. And C, there was no way I wasn't going to apply and see what that was like. So I did. I spent too long putting my resume together, but I'm glad I did. I sent it. And I ended up getting hired right as Hyatt was creating the lifestyle group for the first time. They had acquired Two Roads Hospitality, and that gave them the opportunity to create this whole division of lifestyle brands. And I was part of the launch of that whole division for Hyatt.
Wow. Well, that's quite a journey.
I don't like to be bored.
Sounds like it. A lot of challenges, especially opening new concepts, but also super exciting. Well, tell me what your role actually entails for people who've never heard of this job title before.
It's a challenging question because every day is incredibly different. Some days I'm getting to be on this incredible podcast, like today. But earlier today, I had calls with an organization that was looking to program more no and low activities around the country. I had a conversation with one of our supplier partners who was looking at ways that they could help support going into this year. But in general, I report to a pretty corporate structure that operates out of New York, but our team is like really heavily resourced in F&B. So I split kind of my time between our ops side and our creative and development teams. So on the ops side, I'm working with our hotel properties to analyze the costs and the amount sold of drinks to figure out if we're charging the right amount, if we need to offer new things. I work with our beverage leaders on, growing their teams and education, training, consistency. I do a lot of menu development now. That kind of ebbs and flows depending on how much we're working with properties on their menus and how much I'm doing. But I've got like 6 menus on deck that I need to finish right now. Lots of Zoom calls, lots of spreadsheets, but I'm also almost traveling every single week at this point, and I have been for a while. So I was in Austin working with a team on a new omakase a menu that we're launching. I'll be in Miami next week. I've been in California a bit this year. We have international properties as well. So the travel is a big piece. I often say that my office is actually whatever seat on the airplane I'm on. So like I get the most work done there.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like kind of a dream role, actually.
It is one of the coolest jobs in the world. It's not for everybody. It can be incredibly challenging, but if it aligns with, your priorities and the things you love, it's the dream. And there's just so few of them out there. I feel so lucky and so grateful to have this one.
And give me a sense of like what types of decisions are you making versus what types of decisions are made at the property level?
Great question. So at this level, at my level, we have a core beverage program that essentially operates with suppliers on a national level, and we give an outline of the beverage selections we're asking our teams to make.
And now, a word from our sponsor. If you're developing a new product and want to avoid costly supply chain mistakes, MHW's Brand Arc can take you from idea to finished product, including liquid sourcing, component suppliers, co-packing, forecasting, all of it. It's a smarter way for founders to scale without building a full operations team. Get to market faster and with fewer surprises. Learn more at mhwltd.com. And now, back to the show.
So I work really closely with our national account partners for all of the big companies to make sure that we're programming that well. And with that, we do it very much supplier based. So our wells are pretty set unless there's something that could flex within, like, Kettle and Smirnoff are both under Diageo. So you could pick either of those for your well vodka kind of thing. But when you get to the cocktails, it's all by supplier category, like categorically. So you have to have something from the Pernod Ricard portfolio. You have to have something from the Bacardi portfolio. And then within those, we either give, a lot of confidence and faith in our beverage leadership teams to make those menus with my approval and oversight, or, in the last couple of years, we've a little bit clawed some of them back just because the leadership has changed so much and the dynamic of education at a colleague level. We've seen so much turnover. We have leaders who aren't as experienced in some cases. We have people who are so passionate, but maybe have never been taught how to build a menu. So my role then has been to really do a lot of that creative work and then turn it over with the educational aspect of like, hey, this is how I got here. This is how we can, work towards you taking this over. I did one recently where I took the alcoholic drinks and I had our beverage manager take the non-alcoholic drinks. And I went down and I tasted them with her and we made some adjustments and talked about where they fit. So lots of different sides of it. But the bigger thing to me is that all of our hotels are very different. We have brands, but all of the places that they're in are so unique. None of our concepts are replicated. So finding a way to have, a sense of place and authenticity at a like property level is really, really important to me. So my ask is that they take what we give them from this corporate structure and then they really utilize their local partnerships, their local spirit brands, local ingredients, local connections, and make it feel like it's supposed to be there because that's why people travel to go see something new.
Yeah, that's so cool. All right, so just to give people a sense, roughly how many properties and beverage programs fall under your scope today?
It changes all the time. We change when the divisions move around. We did different brands shift, which happened last year, and I was like, I used to know the answer to this. There's also a lot of hotels that are managed by Hyatt, but the food and beverage is managed separately. So I believe we have 71 within the division, and then I think 38 of them have managed F&B, and just over like between 75 and 80 venues between those properties. So it's like it's a little convoluted, and we're also opening 3 hotels internationally. Turks and Caicos, Mexico City, Valle de Guadalupe, that'll all have concepts. We are adding a bar to a new hotel in Houston, so it's an ever changing number.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you mentioned that Hyatt doesn't really make multiple versions of the same bar. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, I'm double checking my knowledge still. We do not have a single duplicated concept in the division. On some of the other brands of Hyatt that fall under a different portfolio, they do replicate every now and again, but not within our lifestyle division. I think there's like there may be like a standard cafe under the standard brand that we might do a separate version of, but the one in New York versus Mexico City would be so different anyway that it wouldn't really matter that much.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fascinating because, you think a lot about, hotel chains wanting to simplify and standardize, but it sounds like you're more focused on kind of standardizing like the well, and certain standards within, the product selection as well as the overall sort of menu mix. But I'm curious to hear more, is there like a certain bar or example that you can walk us through of like something that you think has been particularly effective, like a concept that has worked really well and why?
I definitely have an answer to that, but I think that it also helps to know that our lifestyle group is incredibly brand led. You have a lot of systems and standards at the top level, but they're all very unique to the different brands we work with. So, like, we have a mini bar standard for Andaz, and we have a separate one for Dream, and we have, these, and that's part of why I keep the core program so loose and why potentially we'll move to doing a program for each brand specifically. I don't see that being out of the that'll probably be in the near future, to be fair. And so that lets us have this, baseline where people can work within the box that makes us brand, because knowing the difference between an Andaz and a Thompson for me is easy, but for our consumers, for our guests, it's a little bit more challenging. So we're working on like that shift to being a really brand-led organization, which I think is making a big impact as well. Uh, Regarding the what programs and bars do I feel are the most impactful, it falls a bit into the realm of sense of place. It's why we have a whole creative team that works on concepting and creating new partnerships. We have a Tex-Mex cantina in Austin called Arriba Abajo, and when we were opening it, there was a conversation of like, are we opening a taco restaurant in a taco city? And but the way that we did it, we took this fourth floor venue that's also got an outdoor bar and a pool and this rooftop. Really changed up the interior and the colors and the vibes. We created such an intentional menu and we turned it into just kind of a taco party, right? Like tacos and margs. And we didn't overcomplicate the menu. We didn't overcomplicate the drinks. We don't overcomplicate the service style.
And now, a word from our sponsor. For years, the rule was simple: make it beautiful and it will sell. Those days are behind us. In a market this crowded, looking good is just the baseline. What matters now is clarity, conviction, really knowing what you stand for, even if that pushes some people away. The 2026 New Rules report from the Hilo agency unpacks how standout beverage brands are building relevance beyond packaging and polish. If you're ready to rethink what brand actually means, go to newrulesbev.com/report to download your copy. And now, back to the show. So, what skills would you say are most important to succeeding at this role?
That's a great question. It is a multifaceted day-to-day challenge to figure out the skills for myself. But I think ultimately the ways that I find success in this role most are the empathy, being able to connect with our leadership and to gain their trust and to really show them that I do this because I'm passionate and because I care, because I want to make their lives easier and not just being the corporate overlord that comes in and says, this is wrong, fix it, and then leaves, though I still have to do that every now and again. The communication part of it is really important. And it's something I see. I see a lot of sides of this industry through this. And there are a lot of people out there who just don't respond to those emails or don't follow up on the things that they say they're going to do. And I can guarantee you that that is a very big part of why I'm successful because I really value communication, organization, and adaptability. I do 15 things in a day and my mind has to work through all of them and they all have to get finished up. Like, how am I moving from something to something else without losing my engagement? How am I keeping myself accountable? I do a lot of sending myself emails as like reminders. And when it's not there anymore, I don't have to think about it, but it's always on the list if it's in my email. Yeah. And I think you have to actually care about this. If you stop caring, if you stop finding your passion, you got to go do something else. You got to get out, find something new. And every now and again, I'll realize that I'm like not as connected to something as I want to be. And then I'll seek out a way to do a guest bartending shift or to be able to go to an industry event and connect. And I think those events are important at every level because you can't get anywhere really beyond just maybe behind the bar. Not that I'm saying that's a bad thing. I miss it deeply, but without being in the room and creating genuine connections. I went to just about every event I could in Chicago that was hosted by a brand or a bar, educational things mostly, sometimes a party, why not? But one there, really creating those connections with the people that are leading it, with the people that are there and following up on that and saying, hey, thank you. I'd love to grab coffee and talk about opportunities. I'd love to be a resource for things that you do in the future. I work with this venue that might be a great fit. Creating those relationships in a community and, a platform, I think really helps you find further success in your career, if that makes sense.
I mean, I think that's great advice for anyone, for sure. But particularly putting yourself like at the table, speaking up, following up, like I think that is just underutilized. I would agree with that as well. Well, let's talk a little bit about brand discovery. So how is it that you find new brands that you think that Hyatt's properties should work with? Is it through distributors or direct outreach or trade events or how does that happen?
D, all of the above. It's actually really interesting. It was one of the bigger shifts that and several that I needed to make when I went from independent operations to more corporate environment. But when I was running bars in Chicago, I had distributors that would come to me. We'd have meetings set up, every so often, and they would come to me with these new things that were like, "Hey, this company just launched this. We have this new portfolio here." And it was all the cool stuff, all the cachet stuff, the culty stuff. It's hard to find access to that now. The ways that I see most of the newer products and the smaller suppliers is through like a bar convent Brooklyn, or if like a trade show that happens at one of the beverage conferences, or we have a lot of different teams, and a lot of people on our teams will get contacts from their friends saying, I just launched this liqueur out of New Zealand. Can you program it? I'm like, hey, like, let's talk about it. So it does come from all sides, but I think being engaging and present in the more industry led conference trade shows is a really great way because people are there to find those things versus, I do get the cold call pretty often. I think there's two things downstairs I need to taste this weekend, one of which I'm very excited about, the other which I just already know won't work. But I always want to have the conversation. I always want to hear people out. I want to learn what I can, ask the questions that are necessary. And I would love to make our programs more esoteric with new brands and spirits if they make sense. So.
Yeah. And if a new spirits or wine brand wants to enter the Hyatt lifestyle collection, what is the actual pathway look like? Like, what are the steps and who's involved?
That can also go a couple of ways, and it's part of because a lot of our structure now has, that brand-led mentality, so we put an emphasis on our marketing and branding teams who will seek out partnerships. We launched a non-alcoholic beer partnership with a company called Bureau just this year, and that came from our marketing team looking at partners that would make a lot of sense for the Thompson brand. And so that's just Thompson, but it's all of our Thompsons in the US, and it's, a brand I had been unfamiliar with, but they looped me in. They said, "Can you look into it?" I reached out, I tasted the samples, I asked a lot of questions. We went through a lot of that, and eventually it made sense. And I've only seen a month's worth of data, but it looks like it's actually outselling our other NA beers. So that's really exciting. I love the data side of this. It's insane. The other ways of doing that, I think, come through having what you need to have when you show up in the conversation. And that's a really hard thing to explain to a lot of new brands that their success at a national level can only happen if X, Y, and Z. So, A, you have to be nationally distributed and you have to know your distributors, right? Like if you can tell me that you're with the big ones in every market and I give you a market list and you can put your distributor on every one of them with your pricing on that, that's incredibly helpful because what I don't need to do is tell these teams who I'm still trying to every day ensure that they trusted my decision making. Hey, we're bringing this product in. Ooh, sorry, that's right. It's not available in your market. Like, or, oh, we've got distribution issues. So like maybe later, like it's such a bad look. So that part's huge. And knowing your audience is another big one. We get pitches for brands that I think would make sense at a lot of hotels in the country and in the world, but maybe not for the lifestyle portfolio, right? Maybe that's something that's more suited to a Hyatt Regency or even to like an Alila for certain products. Like, yeah, knowing your audience and really curating towards that is really helpful. If they know my brands, they know my markets, they know they can speak to why this makes sense at a dream hotel and why this makes sense in the Texas market. It's really great. The quality for us is very important. I'm really lucky that I get to continue education in the bar world. So I'm constantly tasting. I'm constantly doing online courses. I did Bar 5 Day a couple years ago to really like deep dive. So I'm able to smell and see and taste something and know whether it's good. That thankfully is the first barrier of entry. I won't ever program something if I don't believe it, if I don't think it's quality. I've tasted it, for sure if we're recommending it. And then price point is the other one. There's a lot of like that gotten some stuff recently that I'm like, this is really beautiful and it's really good. And at $65 a bottle, I can't do anything nationally with it. So I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I wondered, we talked a little bit about the brand selection. There's some of it that's at the local level, some of it that's at the corporate level. How does that mix typically look? Like, what percentage of the brands in a typical bar program are selected at the corporate level versus the individual property? And like, how do you think brands who want to come into the program, like, how should they navigate that?
I would say it really, again, depends on the bar. Like, I mean, there's not a whole lot of consistency in our programming. For a while, we did specify back bar mandates, and in the moment, we're not. I think that might come back, but currently, I'd say maybe 30% of what we do is kind of coming from a higher level, while a lot of the stuff that people use at our hotels is in every one of them. It's not necessarily forced upon them. If we have something great, then we're going to, use it in a lot of places. The more beverage managers are going to know about it. So there's the overarching stuff from me is really big brands, and then they have the big brands in the rest of the hotels. But what I love to see is the smaller portfolios with more engagement. When I do get brands that come to me that check the boxes, I'll often look at where that category of spirit or that style of beverage is going to perform best based on my understanding of the regions. And then I'm going to look at my hotels and who do I have beverage leaders that are really strong at. So then I can connect them and say, hey, like you've got a product that does well in Texas already. Let's start at the Thompson Austin, the Thompson Dallas. Let's start at like the Hotel Magdalena, one of our bunkhouses in Austin. And you've got local support. Let's plan activations. Like I want to see how you partner. I want to see how our teams respond to it. I want to, test it a little bit. And then if that works, we can grow. And what I found is that a lot of the time that there's a lot of talk up front about how impactful they can be at a properly level. And then 6 months later, I'm like, oh, hey, checking in. What have we done? Like, oh, we're still working on that. I'm like, I've learned a lot.
Well, it sounds like just like at, retail or at any on-premise, it's like, do you have, as a supplier, the ability to support this account? And how are you going to support this account?
The local support is so important. Our teams connect to stories and to people. They don't connect to a bottle they've never heard of or seen anything about with. So if you've got somebody in there that's buying the drinks, that's talking to people, that's doing the education more than one time a year, there's a lot more of a success rate.
Yeah, yeah. And for a bar in the collection, is there a minimum size for a supplier? Like, let's say that the regional supplier wants to come into one of the bars. Do you say, or, with your kind of property level partners, do you say, like, okay, look, we can't talk to anyone who's under X amount of cases or something like that because we may have stockouts, or like, how do you think about that?
Quite the opposite, especially on a property by property level. I'm really interested in those brands, those suppliers, those partners, those people, partially because they're usually carrying the things that you don't see everywhere, which is something we definitely want to be working with if it's quality. And partially because they're really hungry and they're really excited and they want to get in there and they want to connect. And I remember my bartending days, when I had a partner like for our bar, like maybe it was our well tequila, like I'm going to use Tramba as a reference. Like Tramba was available in a lot of places, but it was really new. That guy was in our bar hanging out, having drinks, talking, inviting us out to things. Hey, Sunday we're going to go watch the Bears game over here if you want to come and you're not working, and like really creating the connections. And while I was connecting with this person, I was accidentally, and sometimes I'm sure intentionally, learning more about this product, and it was becoming something I thought of really often. And that's like you miss that once you get out of those spots, and it's so important. So, no, I think hopefully most people are aware enough to say that they're not going to try to get into a high volume bar cocktail placement if they can't prioritize where their stock goes. But I want us working with every level, every size of
Yeah,
supplier. Yeah.
yeah. Well, how do you think about risk when you're introducing a new brand? I mean, so is it like you want to pilot just at one property first and then expand it out, or does it kind of vary product to product?
If we're looking at bringing something in on a national level, I try for 3 to 5 venues, or yeah, usually venues, probably properties depending on the stuff. And I try to make sure that they're in different markets, just because what works in Texas isn't gonna work in Seattle necessarily. And I really wanna make sure that whatever we do is good for everybody. Otherwise, it should just be in Texas, and that can be a thing too. So, yeah, 3 I was trying to think of ones that were successful, and It's hilariously successful everywhere, but we kinda did that with Lalo a bit back. I had somebody reach out saying, "Hey, we want to do this, we have resources," and I'm like, "Alright, let me ask some questions, let me taste it." Hilariously, they dropped off 6 bottles at my house, and I was like, "Okay." But which honestly was kind of a move because then I had it, and I drink tequila, and this person knew this, I drink a lot of things, but, like, I was just drinking Lalo for months because I had so much of it, and I was, like, taking it to friends' houses for parties, like, "Hey, here's the thing," like, that was like at first I was like, "Why did we do this?" And I was like, "Oh, I see you." But yeah, we tried that out in Texas. We tried it out in Miami and I think somewhere else, and it was successful. Like it's something that, and then the brand obviously growing, it's really helpful. But that 3 to 5 spot, I think, is the long, short answer to that question.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's great to know. And what are the common mistakes that brands make when pitching your team or you?
They need to know the brands that I'm working with. It's helpful if they've done some research on our hotels and our history of, where we've started as lifestyle versus where we are now. It also is low key not so bad if they have Googled me, because they can see pretty quickly that I'm one of the beverage directors at a large group that has ever actually worked behind the bar, that is very engaged with the hospitality industry and the community, that still does a lot of that. So they don't need to necessarily waste their time with the cliff notes on their brands. They can get more nerdy. We had a supplier for an RFP once that had 8 people on the Zoom. It was a 30-minute Zoom RFP, and there were 8 people. And I knew her, so I asked her later. I was like, "Why did you have so many people on that?" She's like, "Because I knew you'd have questions, and I wanted you to have the answers right then." And I was like, "Interesting." That's smart. But in the same RFP cycle, I had another company who has this whole deck put together, and I'm going through it, and I was like, "That says Hilton." I'm like, guys, you didn't even change the deck." Bad luck. Or there are times where people are just pitching things that we really like, I can respect in the industry and see a place for it, but they just won't make sense. And that's always frustrating because I feel like I've wasted their time, which I feel bad about. I feel like they're so off base that it's hard to get back there. I won't name those brands, but yeah, it's there's a lot of avenues to it, but doing your research is really important.
Totally. And how important is distributor advocacy? Along those same lines, what does effective distributor support look like?
That was something I had to learn, actually. I was really good with working with the distributors on a local level, but it didn't really cross my mind how different each of them would be nationally and how each market has so many different distributors. At first I was like, "Oh, you can get that through Southern." And they're like, "No, you can't. Southern doesn't exist here." I was like, "What do you mean? That's not a thing." The way that I work best with our distributors is I have a national accounts person or team with them now, with almost all of them. I secured one from Reyes, which actually didn't even used to have a national accounts team until last year. And I finally figured out who it was. Wow, like super impactful already, like really game changers. Like in that case, I was having issues getting weekly delivery from some of our bigger hotels, and they had bi-week or every other week essentially, and I was like, "I can't stock that much of this product for 2 weeks." Like, and they're like, within 24 hours, he had fixed it. It was extraordinary. I'm like, "Thank you." Like, wow. So a lot of the times it is working with them on product placements. They know which of our core beverage portfolio brands are in there, you know, they can forecast if there's gonna be a shortage, and having them being able to let me know that in New York, we're gonna see less of this product for a minute, so, like, stock up if you can. Working with them on data, I do a lot. There's a lot of weird legalities with hotels and liquor companies and how the money moves and the data. They're able to take the data from all sides and create essentially curated packages that they can give to me that say, "Hey, like, here's the trends, here's what's not doing well, here's how your hotels are performing against the overall," which is really great to see. So I work with them more on that scale than I do in like a brand finding mission usually. And I think that's probably because the smaller brands are less likely to be available nationally. So if like my Southern rep knows like, "Hey, there's this really cool liqueur, but it's only in 4 of your markets," she's not gonna bring it to me until it's in a larger space.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, thinking about the smaller brands, what separates the brands that successfully scale across multiple properties from those that only stay in one or two properties?
The most success I've seen happens on a much higher scale than just working with me. I think that to make your brand scale successfully at one of our like lifestyle hotels, it needs to be doing really well in the cocktail world market, in the sometimes retail is really important for us because we have people that come and they recognize brands and they call for them because they're comfortable and they're already in a new place. They're, trying to figure out what they're doing in this city and like, oh, something that I understand that makes sense that I can trust. Like, yeah, I want that. But in that vein, this used to be so much more ubiquitous, and I think it's gone away a bit during the pandemic, but might be coming back. Is like trade advocacy, having like people that are actual experts in that category, people that are so connected to their city and their region that are trusted, that are out there speaking about it. It's not just this random person who changes every 3 months who's coming in and saying, well, what do you think about doing this? It's, the rep for this brand in Miami who's got the whole region and everybody loves her. And she's like, I'm going to like throw a party at your pool. I'm like, okay, sounds great. Those connections, like if you get those in the big markets and then the secondary markets, once you've gotten that foothold, it's so much easier to scale.
Yeah, yeah. Well, along those lines, like what would you say the most effective supplier or brand activations or partnerships look like? How do you like those relationships to evolve over time?
We see better results when we've got a supplier that's coming in and doing quarterly unique activations. Like maybe we're going to throw a pool party and they're, like they can help with X, Y, and Z. Like I'm not going to speak to what legally they can and can't, but everybody should always just get on a phone call. I will say that. Not in media, not recorded. Yeah. And then from there, like maybe the next thing is a cocktail competition that brings in the local community. Maybe the next one after that is a really well-known guest bartender who does a master class, and like having different, unique, engaging things versus saying, okay, we're going to do Taco Tuesday once every month and there's going to be a band. And it just like, there's no reason to engage often with that. It becomes really stale. I think of the brands that help shape kind of where I'm at right now, and the ones that really held true are very experiential. They had great advocates first and foremost, which I was able to connect with, but we had a rep for a pisco company who brought the owner in and basically gave us this like cool like esoteric tour of Peru through what he was doing, and that helped me really understand the category. And it was coming from somebody who I was like, oh my gosh, it's really cool to be in a room with this person. I had a rep for a gin company. I mean, everyone knows Hendrix and what they do. I might as well just call it, where they like at every level, right? Like they're doing really interesting, unique tastings that get you involved. They're putting you on a hot air balloon every now and again. Like from the bigger to the smaller things, they take these incredible trips to Scotland where you get to connect with the distiller and the sense of place of it. There's like a very holistic element to those. Bacardi had some really great parties back in the day, and I think they probably still do. But at the same time, they also did things like bartender boxing, where they took a handful of us and trained us how to do something that was actually for the better of our health, and then gave us a platform and a stage and excitement. It's that holistic angle is really important.
So let's talk a little bit about beverage trends. What are the most important beverage trends that you're seeing across all of the properties right now? And I'm also interested, are there certain cities that are leading those shifts?
Definitely. I want to be a little cautious about using the word trend. And I say that only because there's a difference between a trend and a movement. And so when I speak to some of these things, I'm not necessarily believing that they're short lived the way that technically a trend would be. And I say that because I had this conversation with somebody a few years ago where they asked me if I thought that the zero proof world was just a trend. And they did. And I very much said, no, I do not. I know I'm very close to this. It's a program that I launched, and, you know, it's very important to me for many reasons, but I don't see this being a 3-year thing and then people stop caring. I think this is something that's going to evolve to the point where they're writing books about it, where you've got, really like things that are tied to it. I'm kind of surprised it hasn't happened really yet, but I'm waiting for the modern classic NA like drinks you can just call. Like, where's the penicillin at? Where's, like the non-alc version of these things where I can walk into a bar and the bartender knows that I'm asking for this thing. And I'm surprised we haven't gotten there yet. Maybe one day, hopefully soon. Hopefully sooner than protein cocktails, which is absolutely a trend. Fingers crossed. And then you look at, the zero proof thing is really big. I won't say that it's taking up a lot of the financial sales, but I think it's really adding to the brand value for us. So, there's data that shows that a group of people will go to the spot where the non-drinker wants to go because they know that they can get something. But if that person is going to be really happy with the options, the whole group's going to have a better time. So having that intentional, impactful offering that your team understands and having as many of them as you can reasonably fit is a really smart thing right now. Tequila, tequila, tequila. I don't know if that's much of a trend. I feel like the fact that it's overtaken vodka and, whiskey essentially makes me think that it'll stick around. Seeing where those things kind of keep falling is really interesting. There's a big martini culture right now that I get really into because it's one of my favorite drinks. But seeing all of these, former drinks coming back, it's also tied to nostalgia a bit. A lot of the drinks of the past are coming back and being better made, like the apple teenies, the, Midori sours, the lychee teeny, like those things are falling into kind of this combined movement of nostalgia and martinis that I'm seeing. Um, some interesting ones. The Cristalino tequilas are kind of a polarizing one right now. I'm not going to get on either side of that here, but it's interesting to see how successful they are with how much the bar community is, hesitant to engage with it because of the, for anyone who doesn't know, you're basically taking an aged tequila and you're filtering it to make it look like a Blanco, and it strips some of the taste, but you still have some of that, characteristic, and it's this new category. But big tequila is putting a lot of money into it, so I'm seeing why it's everywhere, and I'm curious to see if that's a trend that'll continue or not.
Yeah, lots of great trends for any on-premise operator listening for sure, or any retailer, frankly. But for those who are listening that are on the on-premise, because Hyatt has resources, so I'm curious if there are systems or program structures that have a big impact on beverage performance or profitability. Like, are there certain data providers or programs that you're using that you have found to have the most benefit?
It's all things that technically we've always had access to, but no one's ever taught anyone how to use. So I can happily go through this. It shocks me, and it probably shouldn't because I was one of these people once, how many people don't know how to read a P&L, like a profit and loss statement. The internet can teach you that. There are many people in your community that can teach you that. Being able to actually understand your overall numbers. Hyatt has a lot of resources. One of them is that our overhead doesn't fall into our F&B P&Ls as much, which is wild because I'm looking at a whole different set of numbers. So being able to read through it is first and foremost the most important, and to understand it and action on it. Another thing that I utilize a lot that has existed and probably is a template on the internet is basically a menu matrix analysis tool. So we take our cocktails, our by the glass wines, our draft beers, anything that's really high selling beyond that. Put that in, put the amount that we've sold but for a period of time, how much it costs us to make, how much we sell it for. And then this menu matrix basically spits out like an overall like state of the land, I guess, state of the union for what our drinks are doing well. And it attaches like names like dog, puzzle, horse, etc. onto it. Star, I think, is the other one, based on if it's high revenue, high profit, high revenue, low profit, low revenue, low profit. And then you can look through it and I can see that, like, oh, our shaken tequila drink that is actually a great drink isn't doing well. Are we charging too much for it? Is it somewhere on the menu that's incorrect? Like, do we do this wrong? Did we not educate our teams on it? Are they making it inconsistently? And we can go through those questions, or we can look at it and say, oh, like we really got excited about this cult hit cocktail that the bar team loved, but it's not selling and it's at as low as price we can get. So like maybe we need to find another thing to fit that category. So I utilize that a lot. There's a lot of systems out there and some of them work better than others. If you have the money to incorporate beverage inventory tools, I think as much as we all like to think we're in control of where our product is coming in from and going to, that's your biggest loss leader is, not being able to control your costs. And it might be locked up, but you're not on the camera all the time. You're not watching your team all the time. So things like that work really well. We utilize a Vero a lot now too, which allows us to see prior trends and forecasted trends in finances. Yeah, I think those are the big ones.
Nice, nice. All right. Well, wrapping up here, if you could give one piece of advice to an emerging drinks brand or a distributor or an on-premise operator, or in all of those categories, what would it be to build long-term relationship with you and the properties that you work with?
I mean, especially in such a large scale, it really is just making a genuine connection. Having the ability to get to know somebody, to have them want to be around you, to want to experience things with them is always going to lead to a longer lasting partnership. I know there's a little bit of like who you know in there, but it's not it's not unreal. And then maintaining your level of understanding and passion of what we're doing. The industry is very different than it was 6 years ago, and anybody who's still living in that time frame is going to see a different level of success because the game's changing, the players are changing, and you need to be able to adapt with the knowledge of what's going on in our world.
Yeah, yeah. A final question that we like to ask every guest. So let's say that a drinks entrepreneur asks you for a recommendation, could be a person to follow or a book to read or really anything that would give them insight or inspiration. What would you recommend?
Overall, I think the local community, most communities have like a bartender board that's going to tell you everything, right? So for the operators and the newer bartenders and even the newer suppliers, being able to engage in your local community through that and show up to all of those things. But I recommend WSET for wine and spirits to everybody because it's so great categoric knowledge. So technical side that. And yeah, just figuring out, like, who's within your niche. Like, there are people out there, if you love, non-alc, drinks and you're looking to grow that, Lauren Paler is amazing. Like, there's specific people within each category, and I think it's important that, there is a well-rounded mentality, but it's not as helpful to know a little bit about a lot. It's helpful to really engage strong into one of the sectors that you care about.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic advice, and I think a good place for us to end. So, Miranda, thank you so much for coming on the Business of Drink.
This has been an absolute pleasure. I feel very grateful to have had this time with you.
Thanks for joining us on Business of Drinks. Subscribe on YouTube at Business of Drinks Podcast, follow us on Spotify, or listen in on Apple or wherever you get your podcasts. Please tap the notification button so you'll be the first to know when a new episode drops.
And help us spread the word. Click those star ratings, give us a review, and share episodes or clips on your socials. It really helps us reach new listeners.
Finally, if there's something that you'd like us to cover on the podcast, tell us. We're at podcast@businessofdrinks.com or reach out via Instagram or LinkedIn.
We love hearing from you and we respond to each and every message. Thanks, and see you next time.